Light is being cast on the FBI's efforts to investigate the Trump campaign. John Solomon's latest piece in the Hill newspaper details internal bureau memos about the pressure applied to Justice Department investigators and their effort to get a warrant on former Trump campaign advisor Carter Page. An email exchange between infamous FBI agent Peter Strzok and his lover Lisa Page from October, weeks before the election, shows their desire to create talking points for then FBI Deputy Director Andy McCabe to help secure that warrant. One email from Strzok reads in part, and I quote, "At minimum, that keeps the hurry the F up pressure on McCabe." And believe it or not, that is just the tip of the iceberg. Joining us now with reaction is Tom Fitton, the president of Judicial Watch. Tom, thanks for joining us this morning. We buried the lead on this one. I'm going to put another quote up from Peter Strzok. This is from September 26th of 2016. He said, and as a pretext, he said this, and I quote, "At a minimum, the letter that Carter Page wrote provides us a pretext to interview him." Pretext is code for an excuse to interview Carter Page. How explosive is all this?
Oh, it's further confirmation that the Trump-Russia investigation was infected by this hyper-political bias against President Trump, where they're looking for excuses to target his team. You had Page write a letter complaining about an improper FBI leak, and the response from one of the top FBI officials, well, let's use this as an excuse to bring him in and interview him. And then they follow that up with the infamous FISA warrants, which were supported, which would never have been approved but for their reliance on the Clinton DNC dossier. And then another aspect of this, which is also in Solomon's piece, is that right after the election, they are talking about the day after the election, President Trump's elected, they focus on, well, we have to get all the people tied to Paul Manafort and compare notes and figure out what we're going to do there. Well, so Paul Manafort is being targeted not because of anything he did wrong, but the trigger is President Trump's election. Paul Manafort, by the way, right now is in solitary confinement.
Yes.
You know, President Trump should really think about ordering his Justice Department to at least shut this Mueller investigation down or pause it, given all the corruption in its formation in the FBI in 2016.
You're referring to an email from Strzok to Page where they said we need all of their names to scrub and we should give them ours for the same purposes. Scrubbing after the election, never a good look. Carter Page was actually on this network a couple of hours ago on Tucker's program speaking for himself. Listen to what Carter Page said.
Do you expect that you're going to be charged with anything after all of this?
Tucker, I couldn't even imagine anything that I could potentially be charged with. It's just, you know, particularly after seeing John Solomon's article today, it just becomes, you know, the whole, you know, using the term from that quote you had, pretext. The pretext was absolutely outrageous, ridiculous.
So they found a pretext. Then they surveilled the guy for a year. That sounds like a guy that seems pretty confident they didn't find anything. Was this indeed the witch hunt the president accuses
Carter Page was a cooperating informant with the FBI, and Strzok knew that. That's why they used the phrase pretext. And the spying on Carter Page was a convenient vehicle to get at the Trump operation. And who knows what other FISA warrants and applications were corruptly sent over to the court as well. Carter Page isn't going to be prosecuted. There is no Russia collusion, and the only collusion that we're aware of with respect to Russia is Hillary Clinton using Fusion GPS to gather Russia intelligence to smear Donald Trump. Mueller ought to be investigating how his investigation started if he's looking for Russia collusion.
Tom, help us for a second, though. According to the most recent statement of expenditures, Mueller's operation is ramping up. What does that say to you?
Oh, well, there are no controls over Mueller, practically speaking. Not only does he have all of these other lawyers he's hired, all of which are registered Democrats, no registered Republicans, he's actually going into the Justice Department and, as needed, using other resources informally. So that budget is just a pretend number because the Justice Department's at Mueller's beck and call, an out-of-control investigation that is really abusive in its targeting and of not only President Trump, but people around him.
Wow, I don't know about you, but I love pretend numbers. They're my favorite. Tom Fitton, thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Hey, you're welcome, Peter.
You got it. Well, and joining us now with reaction from the other side is Julian Epstein, a Democratic strategist and former counsel on the House Judiciary Committee. Julian, thanks for joining us. So you've been on the House Judiciary, you've been on these committees that seek documents.
Yeah, both of them.
Let's say this was the inverse. Let's say this was a Democratic, now president, who was a candidate spied on by an agency controlled by bias toward Republicans. Wouldn't you want committees fighting for every document that they can get? And now these committees are showing us that the bias we saw in the text messages, which could have just been fun, but now they've been institutionalized into pretext, into pressure, into hurry the F up. Does this not take private exchanges and turn them into institutional bias?
No, look, I've been the staff director and chief counsel for both of these committees, and what I would tell the committee chair if I were serving there was, let's look at the big picture here, and allow me just to give you some context. The Republican-chaired Senate Intelligence Committee this week came out and said, yes, the Russians interfered in the 2016 election to help Donald Trump. The evidence is overwhelming. So the idea that this is a biased investigation...
But that's not collusion. I mean, we know about Russian interference. Go ahead.
You didn't interfere with Tom. Let me just finish.
Go ahead.
So that there may or may not be collusion. We know there was interference, so the idea that we shouldn't be investigating this or that's somehow legitimate is just false. That's one. Two, in terms of the collusion question, we know that Donald Trump Jr., we know that Paul Manafort, we know that others, Kushner, met with people who they believe to be representatives of the Russian government who were giving dirt on the Clintons. So whether there was a violation of criminal law, we don't know, but there certainly is some smoke there.
Julian,
there have been 19, let me just finish again for a second. There have been 19 indictments of individuals, 3 by Trump, 3 indictments of Trump campaign officials, 5 guilty pleas. The idea that this is some kind of bogus investigation is just ridiculous. And the IG said on the Peter Strzok, to get to your question, yeah, Peter Strzok may have been a bad actor, but Strzok did not influence any of the major decisions
hold on
at the FBI.
So you just did a masterful job of rattling off every single left-wing talking point as it pertains to this investigation. No, you did a nice job. Then you said Peter Strzok's just this small guy over here. No, Peter Strzok was in charge of the Hillary Clinton email investigation. Peter Strzok was in charge of the Trump investigation. Well, no, he was the agent in charge. He was the agent in charge.
He was a lead investigator. Let's get the facts straight.
I'm sorry. Okay.
He was a lead investigator. James Comey was the head.
Lead investigator. I'm happy to use whatever term you'd like to use. He was dismissed from the Mueller probe for his anti-Trump bias. Yet now we learn he wanted to stop Trump. He wanted to find a pretext. How can you sit there as someone who had wanted to get the facts from these committees before and say, this isn't relevant? And by the way, we wouldn't know this information if not for committees and the IG unearthing it. Of course, if Hillary Clinton won, we would never know. I just don't understand why you can't admit at one moment that sometimes this looks really bad for the institution of the FBI and what they were doing politically.
So I think Peter Strzok was a bad actor and he shouldn't have been there to begin with, but I would refer you back to the IG, which this network has touted repeatedly. And the Inspector General said, yes, he was a bad actor, but he did not influence the final decisions of the FBI, which was not to charge. Look, let me put it to you this way. The FBI, nobody in their right minds, no Republican consultant thinks the FBI helped Hillary Clinton and hurt Donald Trump. On the contrary, the FBI hurt Hillary Clinton by putting information out
if they did.
No, it wasn't accidental. James Comey put out a week.
They said they believe she would be the next president of the United States, and if we do anything to make sure, we need to make her look better.
You don't interrupt Tom. You don't interrupt.
Well,
allow me to finish. So you don't want to hear the facts? You just said inadvertently.
I read your information for this segment, and you said a lot of this was debunked by the IG.
Excuse me.
The IG covered the Hillary Clinton server issue. This new information covers the Trump investigations. The IG hasn't exonerated Peter Strzok on the Trump investigation.
Let's just go and roll back the tape. You just said inadvertently. You're factually wrong about that. James Comey came out the week before the election and said he was reopening the investigation into Hillary.
No.
Well,
he didn't want her to look discredited on election night.
Whoa, wait a second. There's no question that hurt Hillary. The FBI did not talk about
intent.
The FBI did not talk about the Donald Trump investigation before the election. So if there was any bias, it was an anti-Hillary bias before the election.
Because they didn't think he was going to win. And they thought she was going to.
Whatever you may think, but to your thesis,
those are actually facts.
Wait a second. Your thesis is that the FBI was trying to hurt Donald Trump and help Hillary Clinton.
Wait, I don't know how you read
true.
"stop Trump" in text messages. Let's find a pretext.
Let's go back and try and stick to the facts here.
Hurry the F up to put pressure on him. I don't understand. If those aren't plain English in front of you that there was bias, I don't know what is. And you should be applauding the Hill for pressing these institutions to actually get information the public would otherwise not know.
I mean, we can be repetitive as much as you want to be. And let me say it again. Peter Strzok had no business being inside the FBI and was the wrong guy to be inside the FBI. But the Inspector General said, there were probably 200 investigators working on this investigation.
Only one guy in charge, though.
Okay, of which he was one, right? And so Peter Strzok went around and got and organized a conspiracy with 200 other FBI investigators. That is such a silly
but
conspiracy.
But this is an investigation handled at HQ.
Theory.
You know all this. And of course, I'm not indicting all the investigators.
No. Excuse me. This is an investigation that was headed by a Republican head of the FBI, and the actions that he took before the election hurt Hillary Clinton and helped Donald Trump.
Wow,
did Strzok have any business?
Spin, but this is some great spin. James Comey actually wanted to take down Hillary Clinton and support Donald Trump. That's a doozy if I've ever heard it. And you came out starting to talk about facts.
Okay.
I appreciate that.
Find me a Republican consultant that will say that James Comey's actions before the election helped Hillary Clinton.
You're talking about
and hurt Donald
intent.
Trump.
I'm not talking about whether or not it helped or hurt.
No, I'm talking about the impact. You're putting words in my mouth. I never said that. I said it. The FBI hurt Hillary Clinton and helped Donald Trump before the election.
After being called out, you've hedged, which I appreciate.
I pointed out to you that while Strzok may have been wrong, the fact that you have 19 indictments, including indictments of Trump.
If this were the other way around, you'd be saying Peter Strzok was in charge of the investigation. Now just one guy of 200, just one little guy down here in HQ, and he wasn't really doing much.
Let me repeat it to you again. As somebody who's had experience with the FBI, James Comey, Republican, was in charge of the FBI
I don't
investigation.
think he would own that label.
And Mueller's indictments, the fact Cohen now seems to be ready to flip on Trump, everything else seems to be quite validating the seriousness of the investigation.
We'll see. I feel like if they hadn't even get this point, it would have leaked to the
read the Republican Intelligence Committee report.
The New York Times. We'll see.
Read the
Julian,
Republican Intelligence Committee.
We have. No, I appreciate it. Julian, thank you for your time. We got to move on. The left mounts a jaw-dropping new defense of Maxine Waters in her feud with President Trump. And you won't believe who they're throwing under the bus. We're back with that in a moment.